The boarding gate smelled like tired perfume and burnt coffee. Overhead, a tired PA voice droned about final calls and gate changes, but she wasn't listening. She stood quietly in the first-class line, dressed in a plain black hoodie and loose sweats. Her sneakers were scuffed, her curls pulled into a tight bun. She didn't look like someone who belonged in first class, and that's exactly what they wanted to believe. 2 steps ahead, a white man in a blazer chuckled with the agent at the podium. She called him Sir 3 times and told him to have a blessed day. When the woman behind him stepped forward, the agent didn't smile. Didn't say hello. She just stared. A beat too long. The woman extended her phone with the boarding pass and held out her passport. It was worn but clean. She had carried it through over 30 airports. It had seen storms, terminals, and security checkpoints across 5 continents. The agent, her name tag read Kendra Voss, tilted her head, glanced at the passport, then at the woman's face. A passport? For a domestic flight? Her tone wasn't curious. It was suspicious. The woman didn't flinch. It's government ID. It's valid. Kendra didn't move. Her fingers, adorned with perfect French tips, flipped open the booklet. She held it under the light, angled it, then smirked. This doesn't really look like you. Still, the woman didn't move. It's me. I mean, Kendra leaned in with that fake smile that only white women in power know how to use. You look rougher now. Stressful week? Her eyes flicked down the woman's body, pausing on the worn hoodie, the lack of makeup, the skin tone she never quite trusted. The woman said nothing. What's your doctorate in? Kendra asked, tapping the page. Says Dr. Imani Cole. Real official. Sociology, women's studies. There it was. Number aerospace engineering. That silenced the smirk, for a second. Kendra tilted her head again, exaggerated like she was performing for the audience behind the ropes. Funny. Most engineers I've met don't fly first class in joggers. I've got a connection to make, Imani said, voice low and even, and a report to file in D.C. Kendra blinked twice. Then, without breaking eye contact, she held the passport with both hands and tore it clean in half. The room didn't gasp. It froze. For a moment, no one moved. The torn passport fell to the counter like a wounded bird, 2 halves fluttering in opposite directions. Imani looked at it in silence. No flinch, no fury, just a slow inhale through the nose. Behind her, the silence cracked open. Murmurs, shifting feet, a teenager lifting their phone without meaning to. Kendra stood tall, arms folded like she had just stopped a threat. Her smile was back. Brighter now. Let's call security, shall we? Imani still didn't look at her. Her eyes were on the 2 halves of the blue booklet, on the broken eagle seal, on the years of travel, on what that passport meant. Then she spoke. Not loudly, not emotionally. Just clear enough to carry across the gate. You just destroyed a United States federal document. That's a felony. Kendra blinked, caught off guard. Imani reached into her bag, slow and practiced. The crowd leaned forward, tension in their breath. But she didn't pull out a weapon. Just a phone, tapped once, held it to her ear. The voice that answered on the other end was calm, authoritative. Director Monroe, she said. This is Inspector Cole. We have a live breach. Gate A7. I'm invoking a red-level intervention under Article 9. Immediate response required. And notify the DOJ liaison. We've just crossed into federal jurisdiction. She ended the call, looked up, met Kendra's pale, stunned face. You had no idea who you were humiliating, she said quietly. But now you'll find out who you just activated. And behind them, 2 men in dark suits had already stepped onto the ramp. The taller agent reached the counter first. No badge, no words. Just a flash of credentials, fast and final. Kendra instinctively stepped back, her mouth open as if preparing a defense, but no words came out. The second man, younger, scanned the crowd and nodded subtly. Within seconds, a uniformed airport officer appeared beside him. Then another. The murmurs in the gate area turned into a low tide of whispers. Phones tilted higher. Imani turned to face the passengers, her voice still low but steady enough to ripple across the air like heat. This gate is now under federal review. I'm asking everyone to remain calm. This flight will not be departing. Kendra laughed once. Short, breathy, nervous. She's lying. She's not with the FAA. This is insane. She made all this up just to... Just to what? One of the agents asked quietly. Kendra froze. The uniformed officer stepped forward, gesturing toward the torn passport on the counter. Is that hers? Kendra hesitated, then nodded. She tried to use it. It was fake. The younger agent, dark blazer, sharp eyes, didn't even blink. You tore it? Kendra's voice faltered. I had to. It looked off. She was aggressive. I was protecting the gate, protecting the flight. Imani didn't move. She just placed her phone flat on the counter and tapped once. The screen lit up with a recorded timestamp. Her voice from earlier played back crystal clear. It's government ID. It's valid. There was a pause. Then her own voice again, slower, firmer. My doctorate is in aerospace engineering. The audio was sharp, undeniable. No aggression, no threat. Just facts. She's recording people? Kendra snapped, trying to change the current. That's illegal. I didn't consent. One of the agents raised an eyebrow. You're a gate agent at a public airport. Everything you say at that counter is recorded on 5 separate security systems, including the moment you committed a federal crime. Kendra's lips parted, but the words never formed. Her arms dropped slightly. For the first time, she looked small, hollow. Imani picked up the 2 halves of her passport and handed them, silently, to the senior agent. He pulled out a plastic evidence bag, sealed it shut. Everything felt methodical, cold, judicial. Where's your supervisor? The younger agent asked. Kendra flinched. He's probably in the back, Frank Reyes. He oversees this wing. Call him, the agent ordered. Now. Imani stepped back, letting the agents take control. Her hands were calm at her sides, but inside, her heart was pounding with a quiet, deliberate rhythm. She wasn't here to destroy anyone. She was here to uncover what had already been rotting. The whisper of her name rippled through the terminal now. Passengers whispering, Inspector? She's with the FAA? She looked like just some... Exactly. Frank appeared 5 minutes later, tie loose, face flushed from running. He took one look at the agents, then at Kendra, and knew something was very wrong. What's going on here? He barked. We've got a full flight delayed. The senior agent cut him off. You're Frank Reyes? Yeah. Then you'll want to see this. He handed him the sealed passport bag and nodded toward Imani. You have an active federal breach. She's the FAA inspector assigned to Ascension Airline's compliance audit. Frank's color drained. He looked at the torn passport, then at Imani. You're kidding me. Imani didn't respond. She just stared at him, not angry, not smug, just watching, measuring. Kendra muttered, almost inaudible. She can't be. But Frank had already seen the writing on the wall. Where's legal? He said quietly. We need someone from corporate. Now. He didn't know it yet, but it was already too late. Frank Reyes turned slowly toward Kendra, the way someone turns toward a fire they accidentally started. His voice was lower now, like he was already bracing for fallout. You tore it? In front of passengers? Kendra nodded, arms crossed tight. She was hostile, dressed like, she didn't look like... Imani tilted her head slightly. Didn't look like what? Frank raised both hands. Okay, let's just... calm this down. Ma'am, Inspector Cole, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. If there's an issue with the ID, we can verify it and... Your chance to verify it, said the younger agent. Ended the second your employee tore it in half. The words landed like concrete. Passengers were still frozen in place, unsure whether to film or flee. The boarding screen behind the counter still blinked. Ascension Air, 2287 to DC. On time. But everything was no longer on time. Everything was unraveling. One of the agents spoke quietly into a mic clipped to his wrist. Within seconds, 2 more airport security officers arrived, followed by a woman in a charcoal gray blazer walking with slow, unhurried authority. The DOJ liaison. She didn't speak. She just observed. Frank tried to reassert control. Look, obviously something went wrong, but we can handle this internally. There's no need to escalate. I'll get Brenda from legal. We'll issue a new boarding pass, compensation, whatever's needed. Imani finally looked him in the eye. This isn't about a boarding pass. Frank blinked. This is about what happens when someone abuses power to humiliate the wrong person. When assumptions replace protocol. When a system breaks. Because people like her are allowed to decide who belongs in what seat. Kendra's mouth opened, defensive. You're twisting this. You were aggressive. I've worked here 18 years. I've handled all kinds of. Imani let the silence finish the sentence for her. Agent Serrano stepped forward, now holding an iPad. He tapped the screen, turned it, and showed Frank a still frame. Kendra holding the torn passport like a trophy, her face full of smug triumph. We've already pulled footage from 3 angles, he said. Plus audio logs, ID scans, and gate transcripts. She not only violated federal protocol, she destroyed federal property. That alone carries a maximum sentence of 25 years. Frank looked at the screen and swallowed hard. You didn't just make a mistake, Imani continued. You created a pattern, a habit. How many times have passengers been profiled here? Harassed? Delayed for looking like me, sounding like me, dressing like me? Frank glanced at Kendra. She was pale now, trembling. Her fingers fidgeted at her sides. There have been complaints, he admitted. How many? Frank hesitated. How many were documented? Imani asked again, softer this time, but sharper than any blade. Frank's voice cracked. 14. In 5 years. Imani didn't flinch. And how many of them were from passengers of color? Frank didn't answer. The DOJ rep spoke for the first time. We'll be needing full personnel files. Every complaint record, every HR response, starting today. Frank's shoulders sagged. I need to call legal. You do that, Agent Serrano said. But this gate is now under federal control. He turned to Kendra. Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us. Kendra stepped back, panic rising in her throat. I didn't mean. I thought she was faking. It was just a feeling. Imani turned toward her one last time. And that feeling is about to cost you everything. The uniformed officer gently touched Kendra's elbow. She didn't resist. But her knees buckled just slightly as they led her away. The crowd finally exhaled. The sterile walls of the interview room buzzed with silence. Fluorescent lights above flickered once, then settled into a cold, steady glow. Kendra sat alone at a metal table, her palms pressed against its surface as if grounding herself. Her blazer felt tighter now, her lipstick too loud. Her authority had vanished like mist under interrogation lamps. Across from her sat Agent Camille Rowe, DOJ liaison, impeccably dressed, unreadable face. She opened a thin folder and clicked her pen. Full name, for the record. Kendra Lynn Voss, she said softly. Length of employment at Ascension. 18 years. 7 at this station. Have you received FAA-compliant ID verification training in the past 5 years? Kendra nodded. We all do, every year. It's routine. Did you follow that protocol today? Silence. Camille leaned in. Ms. Voss, you were presented with a U.S. passport. You had equipment at your counter designed to scan, verify, and validate that document. You bypassed it. Why? It looked off, Kendra said quickly. It was too clean. The photo, she didn't look the same. She was dressed like. Kendra froze. She had already said too much. Camille didn't raise her voice. Let's be clear. You made a snap judgment based on what she wore, how she looked, and the assumption that someone like her couldn't be a doctor, let alone a federal inspector. I didn't know who she was, Kendra snapped. She tricked me. No, Camille interrupted, voice icy. She didn't trick you. You exposed yourself. A knock at the door broke the stillness. Agent Serrano stepped in and handed Camille a document. Personnel records, 14 passenger complaints against Ms. Voss, 9 for racial profiling, 4 for verbal mistreatment, 1 ADA violation, all signed off by her supervisor. Camille flipped through the pages slowly. That's a pattern, Ms. Voss. One the FAA can no longer ignore. Kendra's voice cracked. I wasn't trying to be racist. You don't have to try, Camille replied. Bias rarely shouts. It whispers. In who gets questioned, who gets delayed, who gets humiliated without consequence. Until today, Kendra lowered her head, breathing unsteady. She wasn't used to being the one under the lens. Meanwhile, down the hall, Frank Reyes sat in his office surrounded by unopened safety binders and dusty plaques that read, Excellence in Operations. Imani Cole stood across from him now, not as a passenger, but as a federal authority. You buried every one of those complaints, she said, her voice calm but coiled. Dismissed them as overreactions and customer mood swings. You allowed a toxic culture to survive at this gate. Frank tried to defend himself. She was difficult sometimes, but she got results, on-time departures, clean audits. She managed the line. She managed a hierarchy, Imani cut in, one where white families were greeted with smiles and everyone else was treated like contraband. Frank swallowed hard. I've already requested every surveillance tape for the past 30 days, Imani continued. We'll see how deep this pattern runs, not just with Kendra, with your whole crew. You don't understand how busy it gets down here, he said, desperation rising. We don't have time for hand-holding. You had time to train, Imani said. You had time to protect. You had time to report. You chose silence. Agent Serrano stepped in. We've also reviewed Flight 819's emergency landing report. It appears your name was on a maintenance sign-off while the technician was out of the country. Frank's lips parted. He looked like he'd been punched. Imani leaned in, quiet and merciless. This isn't just about racism anymore. It's about liability, about safety, about the lives you've gambled. Because you believed certain passengers weren't worth following protocol for. Frank stared at the floor. The room suddenly felt smaller. By the end of today, Imani said, backing toward the door, you're going to wish all you had done was tear a passport. By nightfall, the Ascension Air Terminal at Gate A7 had transformed into something between a crime scene and a press leak. Yellow-badged investigators moved in silence, eyes on monitors, fingers scanning documents like surgeons. TSA logs were seized, employee keycard histories pulled. Every boarding pass scanned over the last 72 hours was under review. Imani stood at the center of it all, not in uniform, not even in heels, just in that same plain hoodie, arms crossed, eyes locked on a wall of evidence screens. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about what she'd just uncovered, a pattern far older and deeper than Kendra Voss. Agent Rowe stepped beside her, holding a tablet. It's bigger than we thought. There's a handler in baggage who flagged every traveler with an African or Arabic surname. Random inspections logged 4 times above average. Imani didn't blink. And who signed off on that system? Frank. Every single one. Imani nodded once. Go deeper. In another wing, Kendra sat alone in a federal holding cell, her world reduced to cement blocks and fluorescent shadows. Her phone had been taken, her name tag discarded, and still, somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice insisted, this isn't fair. This isn't what I meant. I'm not that person. But the footage didn't lie. Neither did the email she once sent joking about skipping over the rowdy ones or mocking a Middle Eastern passenger's ID photo. The evidence wasn't screaming anymore. It was just sitting. Quiet. Undeniable. Meanwhile, Frank sat across from a legal rep on a thin vinyl bench. The man barely made eye contact. They're building a negligence case. FAA, DOJ, and now Homeland. You're not just on the hook for racism, Frank. They've got you on falsifying flight safety reports. Frank swallowed hard. I didn't do anything myself. I just signed off. That's called complicity. The word hit harder than expected, like it had been waiting its whole life to find him. Back in the operations room, Imani stared at a looping video feed of Kendra tearing the passport, over and over. Slow motion. Frame by frame. She exhaled through her nose, barely audible. Her voice soft. They always think they're the last domino. Agent Serrano turned to her. And they're never alone. She nodded. That's when the email dump came in. Tens of thousands of internal records, hidden complaint summaries, passengers labeled difficult in internal memos, almost all of them black, brown, elderly, or visibly Muslim. Flight attendants who logged objections, a pilot who quietly flagged the pattern a year ago and was transferred to cargo shifts. Every thread they pulled led to more rot. This isn't a rogue agent problem, Imani said. It's structural. Ro tapped the tablet. And with your name on the audit, the structure is about to collapse. Imani looked out the window. Beyond the glass, planes taxied quietly beneath an orange dusk. Somewhere, families were flying home. Elderly couples were landing, students arriving for interviews, people who would never know how close they had come to being dismissed, delayed, or even endangered, simply for not looking right. And now the machine would be forced to see them. 3 weeks later, the footage leaked. Not the full investigation, not the audits, just the sound. That quiet, unmistakable tearing of a passport at Gate A7. It spread faster than press releases ever could. A single moment of power abused, shared in millions of pockets. The internet didn't scream. It froze, the same way that Gate had, the same way Imani had. And when her name surfaced, not as a victim but as a federal inspector, it wasn't just shocking. It was shattering. For days, news cycles were relentless. Rogue Gate agent tears up black FAA inspector's passport. Then came the deeper revelations. Internal bias patterns, falsified logs, the maintenance fraud. Ascension Airlines was grounded, audited, fined, sued, and worst of all, seen. Their CEO gave a national apology. He didn't blink once during it. His smile never touched his eyes. He knew what it meant when the FAA appointed a court monitor. This wasn't image rehab. This was reckoning. Kendra Voss was charged with destruction of federal property and civil rights violations. She cried during arraignment, said she wasn't racist, that it was a mistake. But her own emails, the testimony, and her silence when it mattered, all spoke louder than she ever had. Frank Reyes pled out, testified against her, against himself. He traded his corner office for a 5-year ban on working anywhere near a federal transportation hub. His file became required reading for new FAA inspectors, a case study in managerial cowardice. But Imani Cole? She said nothing on camera. She didn't do interviews. She didn't write op-eds. She didn't clap back online. She just filed her final audit report. It was 173 pages long. Bulletproof. Every violation footnoted, every complaint named, every signature that had once buried misconduct now dragged into sunlight. The final page read simply, Gate A7 is not a gate. It is a mirror. 6 months later, she stood in front of Congress. Not in a hoodie, in a tailored navy suit. Eyes steady, shoulders square. Her torn passport, now preserved behind glass, sat beside her. I wasn't humiliated, she said into the mic. I was documented. That's what bigotry does when it thinks no one's watching. And this time, we were. Silence followed. Then slow nods, a few gasps. One tearful staffer in the back row who looked just like someone who had once been randomly selected. Later, as she packed her briefcase, a young black flight cadet stopped her in the hallway. I saw what you did, the girl whispered, and how you didn't yell, you just held your ground. Imani smiled gently, because that's where the cracks are, and the truth always leaks through them. Outside, the sky was streaked with jet trails, crossing like scars that healed differently each time. She walked alone to her car. Quiet. Calm. No sirens, no noise. Just the slow, powerful silence of a woman who didn't need to shout. Because the entire system was still echoing her name. And the next time someone in a hoodie stepped into first class, they'd think twice before asking, "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" Because now, the seat had changed forever.